Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rita. Today I'm going to be reading another Reddit no sleep story, and I'm going to be posting these kinds of videos until I have enough information on my missing persons case, and I apologize for not posting earlier, but I want everything to be as possibly as accurate as possible. So until then, I'm going to be reading these stories. Today I'm not going to be filming myself because I'm not very presentable. So I'm just going to leave a background image, and I like to listen to these stories actually when I'm working or studying. So this story has three parts, and I'm going to read part 1 and part 2 today. It's called The Depression Project. I'm going to be leaving the link to it below on the description as well as the author's page. Part 1. What I'm about to tell you has haunted me for the past 3 years, and I never told anybody it. Until now. I work as a security for a big medical company. I started a few years ago, and it was a pretty normal day-to-day job for the most part. I'd spend most of my working hours staring at camera feeds and patrolling around the perimeter, with no incidents ever occurring. Then, one day, I was called into the office for a talk with the big shots in the company. Some of the higher-ups, which I'd never even seen before, were there. So I expected them to either fire me over something I screwed up, or even worse, a lawsuit or whatever. Their reason for calling me in caught me by surprise. You've been with us for a while now, and you've proven yourself to be a valuable asset to the company. But I can tell you're made for bigger things. How would you like to undertake a more momentous project? One of the bosses grinned wildly. He went on to explain that the company was going through an experimental project which, if done correctly, could cure depression. They all seemed especially excited about it, stating it would go down in history. The catch was, I would need to take a 2-month-long trip to one of the company's compounds where the experiment was to be conducted. I would have to stay there for the entirety of the experiment and would be briefed on the details upon arrival. I was about to politely decline, but when they mentioned the compensation, my jaw dropped. Before I knew it, I was on a plane to the compound where I would meet the rest of the staff. Upon landing, I was escorted to a remote mountain area where the facility was located. I wouldn't have even seen the facility had it not been for a bulkhead door leading underground. I noticed that the company didn't cut any corners with the construction of the facility. The facility itself was divided into 2 sections, east, where the patients would be, and west, for the staff. The middle was designed as a control room. The whole compound was very ostentatious in regards of high-tech equipment, electronic doors, rooms, and amenities provided to the participants, etc. There were a dozen other team members on board, including 3 other security members, a medic, specialists in psychology and psychiatry, and the team leader, Dr. Miller. 5 volunteers who were diagnosed with depression were with us. We were familiar with the project. Our escorts reminded us that we are not allowed to leave the compound from the start of the experiment until the end, so as to not disrupt the project due to sensitivity. The subjects were not even allowed to exit their rooms for 2 months. We were told we can simply send a message via the master computer in case of an emergency, and their escorts would be there within minutes. Once inside, Dr. Miller briefed us on our duties. As security, mine was to simply patrol the area, monitor the live feed on the cameras, and restrain the subjects in case they acted up. Miller explained that every night at exactly 21:43, the subjects would be exposed to a certain radio frequency over the course of 4 seconds, which would affect their brain and eventually successfully eliminate depression completely. He didn't go into detail about how exactly it's supposed to work. All the staff would be wearing noise-canceling headphones to avoid exposure to the signal due to possible adverse effects. We settled in and prepared for the first day of work. The research team was conducting surveys and tests on the subjects, while I did exactly what I did back at the company, watched the live feed. At 21:30, Miller assembled the staff in the control room for the radio signal. He spoke to the patients through the loudspeakers, asking them to be as quiet as possible, since it was almost time for the radio signal to be played through the loudspeakers. Miller gave us all a pair of soundproof headphones, and personally made sure they were adequately set on each member. All outside noises were instantly silenced when I put on my own set. Once that was done, the doc put a pair on his own ears and pressed a button on the desk. A bright red light appeared above our heads, which indicated that the headphones are to be kept on until it was over. Miller observed us one more time, and after he made sure we were strapped in, he pressed another button. After a few seconds, he pressed the same button again, and the red light turned on to a green one. He took off his headphones, and the rest of us followed. "Subjects, please raise your hands as I call you." Miller said over the loudspeakers and proceeded to call their names. Subject 1, Subject 2, Subject 3. Subject 3, please raise your hand. Subject 3, do you hear my voice? The first two subjects responded, but the third one just sat, motionless, staring blankly in front of himself. Subject 3! Miller became impatient. Damn it. Security, please go and make sure all subjects are alright. Research team, proceed with the survey, and please use caution. I went along with one of the security members and two of the doctors to the east section where the subjects were detained. I looked through the thick glass door in Subject 1's room, and he seemed okay. Subject 2 was fine as well. With each subject I checked, I'd swipe my cards on the door to unlock it, and the research team would proceed to examine the subjects. When I approached the door to Subject 3, he still sat on his bed with his gaze fixed to the wall in front. "Hey, buddy!" I knocked on the door loudly. "You okay in there?" No response. "Hey, can you hear me?" Not even a blink. I stared at the subject through the thick pane of glass, and I couldn't make it out from the noise of the other staff members, but it looked like the subject's lips were moving. I swiped the keycard on the door and it slid open. I carefully stepped inside, observing the subject and his surroundings. His room seemed pristine, just as the day when we arrived, his half-unpacked bags in the corner of the room. I looked at him carefully, focusing on the movement of his lips. He was indeed saying something, but I couldn't make it out. "Sir?" I called him again. "Are you okay?" He turned his head up towards me very slowly while still sitting on the same position. "I'm fine." He grinned widely, not blinking. I can't explain why, but when he looked at me, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand straight. Something was off here, something that unrelenting gaze that made every fiber of my being want to bolt out of there, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. Luckily, one of the doctors stepped in, and as he did, the subject seemed to return to normal, grin gone and all. I got out of there as fast as I could without arousing any attention. Subjects 4 and 5 were responsive, so I was dismissed for the rest of the evening. The following day, I had guard duty, so I spent most of the time staring at the camera's feed. The subjects were doing their normal everyday activities and having examinations by their medical staff. But, other than that, nothing in particular happened. I observed Subject 3 carefully, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Night came and it was time for the signal to be played once again. The subjects were told to stand facing the door, and this time while the signal was played and to be ready for inspection. We all repeated the routine. Headphones on, red light on. Something was different this time though. Although I couldn't hear the signal, I felt something when Miller pressed the button. It's hard to explain, but it felt as if for those 4 seconds I was standing naked in the dark in the front of God knows what. I had never felt so vulnerable in my entire life like I did during those 4 seconds. I heard one of my co-workers whisper my name, but when I looked at them, they were focused on Miller. There was no way I heard anything through these headphones, so had my brain played a trick on me from the deafening silence? I became increasingly agitated for some reason and wanted to just throw these headphones at the ground. This effect seems to have been mutual with everyone because they looked restless, shifting their weight from one leg to another, looking around at seemingly nothing in particular, etc. One of the staff members ignored Miller's warning and took the headphones off while the light was still red, but Miller hadn't noticed it because he was transfixed on the cameras. The light finally turned green, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I took off my headset. Miller spoke over the loudspeakers to the subjects again. "Subject 1, raise your hand." It was then that I glanced at the cameras and noticed that all 5 subjects were still standing motionless. I would have thought the cameras froze had it not been for the timer in the corner. "Subject 1, raise your hand." Miller repeated, but to no avail. "Security, please check up on him." This time, 2 other security guards took the role of securing the subjects. I watched on the feed as they approached the doors and tried to get a response from them, but they just stared blankly. One of the guards opened the door to Subject 1's room and entered, and then all of a sudden the power went out and the entire room was enveloped in darkness and total silence. And then I heard what sounded like a cacophony of gunshots and most blood-curdling demonic scream I've ever heard in my life coming from the east section. Seconds later, a frantic set of footsteps resounded in the corridor next to the control room, and one of the guards barged in, breathing heavily and with a look of pure terror in his face. "Lock the east section, now!" he shouted between breaths. "Why? What happened?" Miller asked. "Just do it!" the guard ordered. The power came back on, and Miller slammed the button which beeped loudly. The guard holstered his gun and entered the room, exhaling loudly. "Oh my God," I heard one of the staff members mumble. Even Miller was pale as a sheet of paper. "Whatever those patients were before," he said as we stared at what was in the camera feed, "they are no longer human." Part 2. To this day, I cannot describe what I saw on those cameras in words which would do justice to the terror I felt, but I'll do my best to describe it here. Subject 1 was standing in his room facing the door, still motionless, but on the floor in front of him was the body of a security guard. I couldn't tell what happened to him, but whatever it was must have been gruesome, because his side was cut open and blood was smeared on the floor and walls in a way that indicated that he died a quick death from a sharp slice. Subject 2 was lying dead on the floor, dried up blood caking his mouth, eyes, nose, and ears. Subject 3 sat on his bed and stared at the wall in front blankly, just like the previous night. He was whispering something, but none of us knew nor wanted to know what. So when one of the staff members suggested turning up the volume, his idea was quickly shut down and the camera feed muted. Subject 4 was the one who froze my bone to the marrow, because at first we couldn't see him anywhere in the feed. And then someone pointed to the slight movement of something in the upper corner of the camera. Miller used the button to move the camera upward, and when it reached the ceiling, some of the staff members gasped. Subject 4 was standing on the ceiling on all 4 like a spider, his head twisted at a natural angle. At the movement of the camera, the subject jerked his head towards it and skirted on all 4s across the ceiling towards the camera at an impossible speed, until the entire camera feed was covered with his face in bloodshot eyes. The eye rapidly darted in all directions, never blinking. I had to look away because I felt so uncomfortable. Subject 4 was slamming the door with his head, leaving a bloody stain on the glass. The head thumps were changing intermittently, something weak and other times loud enough for us to hear them all the way to the control room. It was an unsettling sound, to say the least. "Miller, what the fuck just happened?" one of the doctors asked, and we all looked to the team lead, demanding an answer. I don't know." Miller shook his head in bewilderment, still pale. "Bullshit," one of the guards yelled. "You know something. You did something to them with all that cyanide of yours, didn't you?" "You don't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen." "Well, what was?" Another member jumped in. "Nothing." Miller became defensive. "Nothing was supposed to happen." "Then what did you play on the radio signal?" "There was no radio signal." Silence fell on the room as Miller shouted those words, and for a brief moment, the sound of Subject 5 thumping his head on the glass permeated the room. "There never was a radio silence." Miller continued. This was all supposed to be a placebo effect. Then how the fuck do you explain this? I pointed to the cameras. I don't know. Maybe there was some kind of inaudible signal playing on our headphones and it caused hallucinatory effects. That's... Well, what I saw back there seemed pretty fucking real, the guard shouted. There were a few more minutes of people bickering before Miller shut them up. I think whatever is going on here cannot be explained by logic. He looked at the cameras. Subject 4 was now on the opposite wall, moving his head left and right in a jerky motion for no apparent reason. The knocking from Subject 5 never stopped and this seemed to agitate everyone, especially because we couldn't predict when the next knock would come and how loud it would be, causing some people to be startled. We need to get the fuck out of here, I said. Contact our escort. Miller sat at the master PC and opened a program which I wasn't familiar with. A chat window opened and Miller typed, "Send help now." It said, "User is typing," below for a few seconds until a message came through. "What is your emergency, team?" Miller typed frantically, making typos along the way. "Guard dead. Patient's gone crazy. Send help, now." The person on the other hand was typing for a few more seconds until another message came through. "Proceed with the project, team." "What the hell?" some of us said in unison as Miller frantically sent more messages to the person on the other end. "Proceed with the project." The message came again before the user disconnected. We sat there in silence, with nothing but our thoughts and the incessant thumping which grew louder by the second. I glanced at the camera feed and saw that the glass door of Subject's 5 room had a significantly larger amount of blood on the door and the subject's head and face were mutilated beyond recognition. Still, he kept at it relentlessly. Okay, Miller thought for a second. "We can get out through the main door and then we should be able to walk back from there. Might take a while, but we can do it." We all stared in silence as we shared the same feelings about Miller's suggestions. The main door was directly at the end of the corridor where the patients were being kept in the east section. When some members voiced their disagreement about this, Miller explained that there is also a door in the west section, but that it couldn't be opened from the inside, since it had no card reader, being created only for the purpose of emergency teams coming in and to discourage project members from wandering outside and jeopardizing the project. Eventually, we agreed that we needed to send someone through the main door, who would then close it behind themselves and open the door in the west section, leaving the subject safely locked. In retrospect, it would have been easier to just go through the corridor and exit from the east section rather than wait for someone to come around the other side. But the problem was, no one wanted to go. Although the patients were locked up behind heavy doors, just the thought of passing through that place filled me, and apparently everyone else, with inexplicable dread. All of us knew the doors would hold and not let the subjects break through, but there was something holding us back. Something about going through that corridor that filled us with immobilizing fear. "Fuck it, I'll go," one of the staff members finally said. "I'll come with you." A guard jumped in, drawing his gun. "We'll be monitoring you via the cameras," Miller remarked with visible relief. "The subjects are locked behind heavy-duty glass doors, so there's no way they can breach it. But still, be very careful." In a matter of seconds, the 2 volunteers exited the control room and accidentally entered the east section. As if on cue, the head bashing from Subject 5 abruptly stopped. All 4 subjects stopped doing whatever they were doing prior to that and stared at that one same spot. It didn't take us long to realize that the subjects were staring in the direction of the 2 volunteers. It was as if they could see them through the walls even before they entered the east section. "We're in," the guard said via the radio, and we all stared at the camera feed, holding our breaths. It was unnaturally quiet, even with the 2 members' footsteps echoing through the camera feed. As the 2 of them passed by each subject's room, the subjects followed them with their gaze in unison. And then the staff member stopped in front of the door of Subject 1. Unbeknownst to the guard, continued striding towards the door. Subject 1 and the staff member stared at each other for some sort of trance, with only the thick glass separating them. The entire team held their breath in anticipation, and then a terrifying realization hit me like a ton of bricks. The research member who went with the guard and was the same one who took his headphones off earlier during the radio signal Fuck, the door's locked. The guard shouted and tried to open the bulkhead over and over, but it wouldn't budge. I was transfixed on a research member in front of the door the entire time. With a robotic motion, he pulled out his cue card from the pocket and placed it to the door. I was about to shout, but it was too late. The loud beeping noise already resounded in an alarming loud manner, and the door slid open. "Get the hell out of there!" I yelled to the guard over the radio, who was already sprinting full on the grass of the hallway. The camera started glitching and freezing at this point, so we couldn't see clearly what was going on. From the frames where the image would recover, we saw that all subjects, as well as a research member, were following the guard with their gaze, not moving from their spots. The guard bumped into the door, violently trying to open it. "Fuck! The door's locked!" he yelled. "Miller, open it up!" By this moment, the camera feed completely cut off, and all we had to buy was the sound from the radio, which emanated the guard's panting. "Miller, what are you doing? Open it!" Someone in the room yelled, as the guard's pleading voice got drowned out by the group's shouting. "Do you want to let those things out?" He gave me a stern look, and deep inside, I knew he was right. "Please!" the guard pleaded through the radio. "For the love of God, they're coming! Open the door, please!" We heard a few gunshots echoing through the entire facility, and between them, the guards' panicked breaths, and then silence. For a few seconds, at least. After a few seconds, the radio crackled back to life, and there was a soft humming noise coming from it. It sounded like a lullaby, but a very unpleasant one. No one said a word for a long time, listening to that humming noise, which repeated with the same irritating melody over and over. We tried turning it off, but the sound persisted. Even after smashing the radio on the ground, the humming continued. And then, one of the female staff members spoke up. "We have another way out." "Well, what is it?" Miller asked. "I can override the west door from the master computer by inputting it as an emergency, since all the doors are electronic, but... But? I asked when I saw that she hesitated. "It will open all the doors in the facility." So that's part 1 and part 2. I hope you guys liked it. This is one of my favorite no sleep stories. And I'm going to be posting part 3 very soon. And stay tuned for that. Thank you for clicking this video. Subscribe, like, and share my videos. It helps a lot. Bye!